Okay, so we are back, and today as we were talking about earlier, we are talking to the great political scientist and journalist Marcos Lema. And Marcos, how are you doing today?
Hi, nice to be with you. I am fine, thank you.
And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Marcos, his journey so far as a journalist as well as a political scientist. And we will also discuss, apart from how he got to where he is, as well as why he does what he does and his vocation. We will also discuss his favorite books and the books that books really impacted his life throughout the years, right? So Marcos, let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a journalist and political scientist based in Madrid. Currently, I work as an economic correspondent from El Confidencial, that is a native digital newspaper, and I write about economics in general, mainly in macroeconomics and energy, that nowadays is a very, very
Important.
current topic.
Oh, absolutely. So do you work mainly in Spain, or do you also work in other countries of Europe?
Yes, I work mainly in Spain. Of course, sometimes we have to travel. I was in Brussels last month, for example. I was in Rabat, in Morocco, in March, but normally I work in Spain, here in Madrid, and in other parts of Spain too.
Absolutely. So let's start with, just to start off the conversation, let's start with your first book. What is your first book that you want to tell us about that really impacted you?
Well, my first book is Morning Star. It's not a book written in English, but the title is in English. I explain if you want in Spanish. Morning Star es una novela de aventuras que está escrita en gallego, que es el idioma que se habla en mi región, en Galicia, en el noroeste de España. Está escrita por Xosé Miranda y es una novela destinada a un público juvenil. Yo la leí porque me lo mandaron así en el colegio, en la escuela, con aproximadamente 13, 14 años, y me impactó mucho porque realmente es una de estas novelas que, como La Isla del Tesoro, por ejemplo, que la conoceréis, te lleva como a un mundo diferente y te despierta curiosidad en las cosas, ¿no? Y un periodista, si algo tiene que tener, es curiosidad. Entonces, aunque no sea un reportaje, no sea un artículo periodístico, no sea un ensayo, es una novela, es ficción, esa búsqueda del tesoro que hacen algunos jóvenes en la Galicia del siglo XIX, que es cuando está ambientada esta novela, pues te transporta a otro mundo, aunque sea uno muy cercano a ti, pero a ese mundo novelado, ficcionado, y te despierta esa curiosidad por querer descubrir, por leer más, y realmente es una novela que, a pesar de que era obligatoria que yo la leyese para la escuela, la disfruté muchísimo, como si lo hubiese leído motu propio, ¿no? Como si hubiese sido yo el que hubiese elegido para pasar un buen rato, un tiempo libre.
Entonces dirías tú que es la mezcla de la aventura que traía en sí la historia y la curiosidad es que te despertó ese ánimo, esa pasión por el periodismo.
Eso es, bueno, mi pasión por el periodismo ya venía de antes. Yo desde los 8 años realmente ya le decía a mi padre que quería ser periodista, pero este tipo de lecturas siempre te arraigan más esa curiosidad y, como digo, esa mezcla entre curiosidad y aventura, porque también hay que ser un poco aventurero para ser periodista,
¿Es
es
verdad?
la que te despiertan los libros y que al final acaba pudiendo ocurrir en la realidad si eliges esta profesión tan dura a veces, pero también tan maravillosa.
Exactamente. Regresando a mis tiempos de escuela, también tuve un libro que me forzaron a leerlo, que fue Don Quijote, que es es un emblema en nuestra literatura española, ¿verdad? So that's wonderful. I mean, I think any of us have some capacity, a book like a really mark what we think and the way we see life in perspective.
Absolutely.
Of course. Mhm.
Thank you for that. That was brilliant. So moving on, what is kind of your childhood? I know you the book that you previously mentioned is from the north of Spain as well, which is where you were born, or where your family lives there, I think, as well, from Coruña, which was a lovely place. I was there for a month. It was amazing. Love, it's near Santiago, and it's an amazing place. If anybody is listening and want to go there, I absolutely recommend it. In my personal view, it's much better than Santiago, to be honest with you. To live for a longer time,
you're gonna get killed for this now.
Both places are really, really nice. I live in both places, in A Coruna until I was 18, and then 7 years in Santiago while I was studying and beginning of my professional career. And both places are nice. Each one with its peculiarities, we can say, and good points.
Exactly right.
And bad points too, as everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your childhood. How was it like, and how did you, acquire your passion for writing, for example?
As I told before, I was a very curious guy. I really loved, when I was a child, those maps and those books about geography and history, and it was a very, very interesting to me. Of course, I also love football, as every children. I played a lot of football, and in this moment, in the late 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, the local team from A Coruna, Deportivo, was very, very important. We won the Spanish championship, and then we were in a very important position in European the Champions League.
The league, yeah.
So yeah. We reached semifinals in 2004. So because of that, my passion to be a journalist began, because first of all, this curiosity we told before, and second, as I really love football, I liked writing about football. So in the margin of the notebook that I had, of course, for the school, I wrote about Deportivo's matches, and it's like, well, I didn't realize in this moment that I was doing journalism.
Exactly.
But afterwards,
almost in you.
when I was, I don't know, 21 or 22, and I began to work as a journalist, I realized, well, I am being a journalist from I was 8, because I was writing about that. And of course, my colleagues in the school didn't do that, just do the homework. But I did the homework, and after the homework, or even before, sometimes I wrote about those matches, because I really, 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 really love and go to the stadium. It was like a belle epoque, we can say, for us that lived in A Coruna, because it's a very small town with a very important football team that moment, that we defied Manchester United and most important teams from big cities, of course.
Absolutely.
And Marcos, how it is that first article that you wrote available? Do your mom or you have it in a sketch somewhere?
Well,
have you written?
That's a great question, actually.
I have some of these papers, because I wrote in that moment. I even didn't have a computer at home in 2002, so I have
as many of us.
Like in paper, the ancient way, some of these articles, but they must be at the home of my parents, so I must look for them.
Yes, absolutely. It'd be really good to find them.
To be honest, I don't know right now an example of these articles, but I can promise you that 99% were about Deportivo and football.
Football. It seems like since you were little, you had this capacity to mix your passion into everything you do. And I read some of your articles and some of your projects that I cannot wait. One specific one, cannot wait for us to tell us all about it. Just come in a minute. Brújula Global. Personally, I'm so interested into that. And what I see in a pattern, what I'm hearing is that how you mixed again those curiosity, the passion that you have is coming from within and mix it with what you do. I gotta say, I'm a little bit jealous into that regards because not everybody in this world has the blessings of being able to combine both of them. They said, and then generally they can say, "Well, I'm happier I'm working, right?" I mean, I love what I do, anyways. But there is, of course, any challenge. But that is fantastic. Good for you, man.
Yes,
Absolutely, absolutely.
mhm. Yes, journalism is not an normal profession, we can say. So if you are not very, very, very passionate, I recommend you not to be a journalist. So as we love our profession, we can stand some other bad parts of it. And this is why we began with this project, because we are not paid by this project. We have another jobs in mainstream media, we can say, but in our free time, because we are very passionate about that, we found it this interesting project that I think we will talk about it later.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just in a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So that's brilliant, right? So so you kind of, you had a interesting childhood where you're kind of looking at the football as well as, writing, it's kind of developing. So I'm guessing after that you went on to the university, as you were, talking about earlier, in the great town of Santiago de Compostela. And what I would say is that how was that like? What was that formative years like that for you? More importantly, did you keep writing still, or did you change? How was that?
In a way, it was quite disappointed because university, I mean, the formally university, the grade, it was not as interesting as I expected. I mean, it was very theoretical, and as we are journalists, we from the beginning we like to write and to produce, to cover things that are
Right.
happening. So in that sense, I didn't like as much as I expected. But of course, the main thing I did in that moment was not studying the grade. It was like, course I must pass the grade, but for me it was like a commodity. I mean, I just do it, but it's not important for me. I must do it. But
Right.
what I focus on? I focus on writing, of course. So I began to have a personal blog that nowadays you cannot visit because I closed, because now I am quite embarrassed.
I was about to ask that.
But in my free time, I write. I wrote a lot in this blog, and I also do. This is university for me was that the debate club. For me, it was a very interesting experience. I really met such interesting people that nowadays, 10 years later, are my close friends, and we really enjoyed a lot. First of all, enjoyed a lot, and second, of course, we learned how to explain complex things to big audiences, and this was debate. I mean, there were people from medicine doing debate. It was not a journalist activity, but this learning of how to transmit complex things to great audiences was the most important lesson I learned to be a good journalist in the future, in the
That really
years coming after that.
Oh, absolutely. Because that really helped you with when I think you were writing writing speeches for the politicians as well, right?
Yeah, when I was 21, just when I was finishing my degree in journalism, I began to write in the regional government of Galicia, being a speechwriter for the president of the region, and of course,
That's impressive.
And it's a
yes,
huge
I was
responsibility.
the youngest in that cabinet, of
I
course.
bet.
And it was very very fun because you can know how politics work inside, and you can also, of course, you are writing what you are supposed to write,
Mm.
because the man who is going to read this speech is the politician, not you. But you can put some of your ideas in this speech, and sometimes these ideas
Goes
finally
out.
goes out. Yes, and this is very important because you can
Yeah.
influence a little bit on how these politicians are doing their jobs, and for me it was very interesting to do that and to give some of my knowledge to these big audiences, not straight from me, but through the president of
Yeah.
my region, and of course being a debate, we can say, I don't know how a debate player,
A
or
debater, yes.
having done a debate before was very important to do
Absolutely.
properly this job, of course. Yeah.
That's part of something I was about to mention. And I think the message, if anybody out there is listening, like in the young time or beginning of their careers in the journalism specifically. So what I'm seeing and what it took you to was a determination. Of course, it is important to go and get that education from an institution and give you the guidelines. But what I see in is that spirit of yours of curiosity to explore a little bit more, go a little bit above and beyond, get involved into the debate things, and really build that foundation for you. A 21-year-old being able to, at the regional level in a political environment, to push in somehow capacity your own ideas through it. So it helped. And early, Shirosh and I, we were talking about a little bit of politician and how the message is being delivered. So to your point, and I think that comes with talent, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I want to kind of ask you is kind of related to something that we see a lot in writers or creators, which is the imposter syndrome, right? So how did you kind of overcome that, in the sense that you were 21 years old, you were doing something really important, and also adding some of your flavor into this message that this person is giving out, which is something a 21-year-old is a huge responsibility. And I know after that you kind of moved to Madrid, and you were working at País, which is huge. It's a really established. It's a well-read newspaper.
The
How
biggest
did you?
in Spanish.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In South America, it's a worldwide newspaper, right? And how did you feel? How did you overcome that? Because if when thinking about to when I was 21, I had a lot of doubts, even though I knew my stuff. For example, I was, of course, and I was doing engineering or whatever, but I knew my stuff. But at the same time, I doubted myself a lot. How did you overcome that, and how did you feel to being able to contribute to something this important, but not feel like, oh, I'm only 21, there are more important people here who knows a lot more than me? I mean, how did you do that?
Well, of course, it's not easy, and sometimes we hide our, we can say, our the things that we are not very proud of. But I think it's not a good idea to do this. I mean, of course, I suffer, and I suffer nowadays anxiety and sometimes stress, and it's not easy at all. I mean, we can sell itself as a, I don't know, as a winners, but of course behind of that there is a very, very, very big fight, not a fight of you to the others, but a fight with
Being yourself.
yourself.
Yes.
And it's very, very difficult. And each day in this profession is a very big challenge because each day is different. It's not like a bureaucratic profession with
Yes.
very strong routines. No, every day is different. This is why this profession is very, very, very interesting and also very fun if you like it. But at the same time, for your even for your health, your psychological health
Yes.
is quite difficult, of course. And if you are very young and you are among people who are older than you with more experience than
Experience. Yeah.
you must speak your mind, and sometimes it's not easy that
Yes.
those people take your opinion into account. So
Mm.
well,
forgive me.
I had some very hard moments,
Yes.
but I was able to overcome with the help of my family, of my friends, of course, and knowing that this is, as my mom always says, this is a very, very, very long career, a very, very, very long race, and you must do it knowing that each day is like a very, very big part of this race. Because if
Absolutely.
you can have a very big responsibility, but if you think that this is the end, of course, anxiety will be more powerful than you. If you think, okay, we are doing that, and afterwards we will do another thing, and it's not a problem, let's relax. I think this long-term thought is the most important to overcome
Absolutely.
this challenge.
Absolutely. And I
Marcus.
think the important lesson to summarize that, I think, is the ability to speak your mind and not like being able to not really worry about how you look, as it were. And then if you have a large task that, you know, if it's like a daunting task that you want to achieve, always think about how you can break it down into smaller pieces. Like, you know, let's achieve this small little piece first. Don't
Exactly.
worry about the whole thing. And that will effectively break down your anxiety or the feeling of that challenge you have into smaller pieces as well. So that's always a good way to achieve something.
Exactly.
Sorry, I cut you off, Mel. Please go ahead.
Oh, no. I was about to say, Marcus, I love mom's advice because it comes with a huge amount of wisdom and love and truly care. So, por favor, déjanos dilo en español, que lo quiero escuchar como tal.
Sí, bueno, lo repito en español, pues mi madre me dijo un consejo muy bueno, que es que esto es una carrera de fondo y que al final no es cómo se empieza, sino cómo se acaba. Y hay que pensar eso y ir paso a paso.
Exacto. Amen to that. ¿Cómo se llama tu mamá?
Carmen.
Carmen, mira lo que has hecho.
So
La obra genial.
this is great. I love it. So just to kind of distract ourselves a little bit, tell us about your next choice. What is the next book that really impacted your life?
Mm-hmm. I speak in Spanish right now to explain the book.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please.
Y lo hablo y lo digo en español porque es un libro que en este caso es en español y tiene un título en español, no como el anterior. Se llama Decálogo del Buen Ciudadano. Este es un libro que yo leí durante la pandemia, durante esa época tan dura del coronavirus, donde apenas se podía salir de casa y hacer muchas cosas. Entonces, de lo poco que se podía hacer era estar al aire libre y con el sol maravilloso de Madrid, pues tomarse un café y leerse un libro.
Yeah.
Y creo que es un libro muy apropiado para esa época. ¿Por qué? Porque te explica cómo, más allá del hedonismo imperante, de esta sociedad consumista en la que estamos, de este individualismo que siempre lo monopoliza todo, es importante tener un espíritu de sacrificio, bien entendido, no significa resignarse para nada, pero sí tener un espíritu de sacrificio para lograr un bien mayor, que es el del bienestar del conjunto de la sociedad, ¿no? Y te da pues algunos trucos, ¿no? Pues para, como su título indica, ser un buen ciudadano. Recuperando esta moral estoica de ese sacrificio que no estaba de moda antes de la pandemia, pero que ahora algunos hemos vuelto a recuperar y que creemos que es importante porque al final en la vida tú eres dueño de una parte, ¿no? De lo que ocurre, pero de otra no. Hay circunstancias como fue la
Exacto.
pandemia que de repente te condicionan la vida y si no tenemos esa capacidad de adaptación y ese espíritu positivo y generoso, pues al final lo que haremos es, pues en aquel momento, como hubo alguna gente, pues no cumplir ninguna de las normas, ser imprudente, contagiar a gente vulnerable. En aquel momento, aunque a todos nos apeteciese irnos de viaje o salir de fiesta por las noches, pues ese libro me ayudó a entender que proteger la salud de los más vulnerables era más importante en ese momento y que ese espíritu de sacrificio pues a veces también tiene recompensas porque creo que hace bien a la sociedad y a uno mismo, ¿no? Y creo que sin ese libro hubiera sobrellevado mucho peor la pandemia y que, como decía Kapuczynski, además un buen periodista tiene que ser buena persona, ¿no? Y creo que ese libro me enseñó esa lección desde un punto de vista más de la historia de las ideas y de la ciencia política, que también estudié, también estudié esa carrera y también me gustan
Ajá.
estos elementos un poco más filosóficos y creo que son muy positivos para edificarse y para tener una vida más rica y más plena, no solo como individuo, sino como ciudadano en una democracia, ¿no?
Lo comparto completamente con eso, Marcos. No he tenido la oportunidad de leer el libro, pero he cubierto el resumen y tú lo has puesto junto de una manera mucho más que llama a acción. En el sentido del COVID, cada quien ha tenido, creo que ha sido la misma pandemia, pero todos hemos tenido una diferente forma de experiencia o de las secuelas en algunos casos, ¿verdad? Um, el mensaje en mi caso nos ha recordado a tu punto, me ha recordado también que somos muy vulnerables en un extremo. Segundo, tenemos mucha responsabilidad, aunque no lo creamos nosotros mismos, porque somos solo un individuo, pero el mundo es tan grande. No,
Exacto.
tenemos mucha parte de responsabilidad en ello. Tercero, regresando al primer punto, vive la vida que te toca ahora porque somos tan frágiles que debemos aprovechar a tu punto que decías, que nos enseña a ser más humanos en el sentido de tener una vida más completa. Con eso comparto completamente contigo.
Uh-huh.
It's really really interesting actually. I speak a little bit of Spanish, so I kind of understand what you guys are talking about, but I don't want to I'd respond because I don't I know it's not, but it's brilliant. I kind of understood what you said and it's really really amazing. So I just want to go back to our conversation where we're talking about you were working in País and of course in a Confidencial as well. So what are the most important trends that you see right now in your area, in journalism, in publications, in news? What are the most significant issues that you see right now that you feel that might have an impact?
Well, I think the economic model that is behind the journalist industry is changing. At the beginning of the internet era, we can say in the beginning of the 2000s, we were we were not focused on what we must do. We were like in a changing moment. We were lost. This is the word. We were lost. We thought that doing bad journalism was a good business, and
Yes.
of course, it's not.
Yes.
Doing good journalism is doing a good business, and this is the change that we are facing right now. I mean, I explain like in more concrete terms. 10 years ago, we were writing about yellow topics or red topics with a lot of violence, a lot of gossip, a lot of anecdotic news. Because people click in this news. So
Clickbait, right? Yeah.
yes, it's the concept of clickbait. We were reaching very big audiences, and as our economic model was based in reaching these big audiences to have a lot of advertisements, we were losing quality in this process. But right now we realize that living just with advertise is not a good model. It's not enough. And as the United States shows, the best way of selling news is like having people who pay for this news. And if you want people to pay for your product, your information, you must deliver a very, very, very good product. And this
Absolutely.
is developing a new way of thinking our work that is returning to the beginning, that is doing a good product and doing
Proper
good
journalism.
journalism. So now we are doing properly, because as we have subscriptors, we are facing this new formats. We are exploring how can we deliver what is happening in a proper way, and we are I think we are doing better than we were doing 10 years ago. And for example, even in El País or in El Confidencial, right now the most important is good information, but quality. Of course, 10 years ago we were focusing on silly things, honestly, and I think this is a good evolution, and I am very, very optimistic about the future.
That's amazing. That's a really interesting observation, I think, because journalists, as you were talking about earlier, journalists or people who might have that power to change governments, provide that kind of changes that may not always be the expected outcome or the best outcome. You have the ability to like manipulate mass amount of a lot of people with a certain set of words, and people will consume that information and of course behave in a certain way. Now, going further, a little bit further to what you just mentioned, that having quality, right? And of course everybody has their own idea of what quality means, right? Everybody understands what that means something different. For example, in the UK we have the Guardian, we have the Daily Mail, we have the Times, and we have other things, other publications. Of course, the same in Spain. Of course, El País is leaning one way, and then there are other publications that might be leaning a different way. That's okay. That's fine. And one of the important, and same in the United States as well. And one observation that you have in here is, so you have same people might be owning Times, for example, and the Sun, but the message that you might give in those two newspapers might be slightly different because they're focusing on a certain people and certain audiences, which is also okay. But how at the same time, who is deciding these things is a question, right? So is it really democracy now, or is it something else, right? So which is what I think you're alluding to as well, where we're talking about how can we be quality, how can we give people who are paying something that really is balanced, it really is objective, if it's possible, without having to and have a maybe even a review process in some way where we can say, you know what, this is this is actually a more balanced article where we're talking about the things in a more holistic or more 360-degree view, rather than saying, oh, it's the left is bad and the right is good, or the right is bad or the left is good. It's not that, things are not black and white in that sense, right? So as you see, one of the issues that when we had that first conversation, we were talking about where people having that echo chambers, right? People are talking about in a much more I only read the Guardian, then that's what I see, versus if I read the Daily Mail or El País, that's all I see, or whatever, right? So what are your thoughts on how to change that? Like, how can we improve the balance in the universe, as it were, and people are not so much, covered in an echo chamber, and they only see what they want to hear, as it were.
This is a very big problem right now because, of course, it's a process that works in both directions. I mean, if you just read a newspaper, you will think what the newspaper says. But if you think this, if your ideology is like this, you will read this newspaper. And
Yes.
how can we break it? It's very, very difficult question. I think as almost every solution in society, the answer is education. I mean, I don't see, for example, in some weeks, I don't know exactly the date, I will go to a school, secondary school, to talk about journalism and about what are fake news, what news are not fake. And I think this is not very common in our educational system.
Absolutely.
And if your father says, "Oh, this is the best newspaper, you must read it," and from you are a child, the newspaper that is at home is this newspaper, and you just read this newspaper, and you open an account in Twitter or Facebook, and you follow this newspaper, and your friends think the same way because are from the same social class as you, or the same neighborhood, or the same religion, or the same whatever, you will be in this echo chamber always.
Your
So,
life.
but if in schools, that is a very big problem here in Southern Europe because we are not used to it. If in the schools they learn you, they speak to you about what is critical thought, about how can we contrast different sources, about the plurality of media, about fake news, about at the end about thinking for yourself, for what a newspaper or your father or your priors or whatever says. I think we can change this situation because we have right now. This is an important point that I will like to say. We have the biggest plurality of media that we have never had.
See. Yeah.
It's incredible. We have everything. What is the problem? That we are not plural.
Yes.
Because from this very, very huge plurality, we just choose what supports our idea. So we must teach from the 5 or I don't know, or 8 years old.
At a very young age, right?
From a very young age, we must teach children to choose different opinions and different ways of thinking. And after that, after all this plurality, they can, of course, choose their own ideas. And this is a very, very, very big challenge we have. And I, in that sense, I am not as optimistic because I am not seeing that public educational system is doing that.
Yeah.
And Marco, that is something that is also seen in South America. I'm from Peru, and it's also the same tendency to it. And to your point, I think there's so many ways that the world even behaves now that can be corrected. I mean, not healthy ways that can be corrected if the foundation really doesn't change. And then maybe that's the next episode. We can talk about more into that because it's a wide topic. But I want to summarize though to what really we all have and we're all born for with it is curiosity that you explore really well since little. So if schools simply were just comes with the critical thinking, right? Be curious about it. Do not get for granted anything that you're in front of you. I'm not saying with that, don't trust in anything. However, be curious, satisfy that curiosity and go deeper and build your own ideas. And I think that's the key. And we see it in, I mean, the journey of your life that you gave us really goes down into that. And of course, now you took that to the professional level, which is the curiosity of the journalism.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's take a little diversion and tell us a little bit about your next book. What is the next book you've chosen that really impacted you?
This is a book written in English, that I read in English, but I will explain in Spanish as the others. It's called Sapiens. Este libro, a diferencia de los otros dos, seguro que lo conoce la mayoría de la gente que nos está escuchando. Es un relato de la historia de la humanidad, pero no a través de una serie de hechos aislados, sino a través de una explicación profunda de cómo hemos ido evolucionando, primero como especie, porque al final somos animales, pero después, por supuesto, como sociedad, porque somos unos animales que precisamente podemos pensar por nosotros mismos y que tenemos esas habilidades que otros no tienen y por tanto hemos ido construyendo sociedades complejas. Yo creo que es un libro genial, es un libro muy brillante porque es capaz de explicar cosas que damos por hechas, pero que no sabemos de dónde vienen. Y a través de esta obra yo he podido entenderme mejor a mí mismo y entender mejor la sociedad en la que vivo y plantearme de una forma crítica de cuál es el origen de determinadas instituciones sociales, de determinados modos de funcionar que nunca me había planteado y que daba por hecho, porque desde que naces ya te educan en ese orden social, pero
Exacto.
como todo es contingente, no es algo que se dé por hecho. Ni la democracia se da por hecho, ni la cohesión social se da por hecho, ni el Estado, las naciones se da por hecho, ni la religión se da por hecho. Todo ello son, y yo creo que esta es la gran lección del libro, son invenciones humanas, son cosas que nosotros mismos hemos ido creando para cooperar mejor entre nosotros y poder vivir en paz y en libertad, aunque a veces no nos sale del todo bien la creación y los efectos negativos de estas instituciones también los hemos sufrido, pero yo creo que es un libro que se lo recomendaría a todo el mundo. Tiene también una segunda parte más enfocada hacia el futuro, que se llama Homo Deus, muy ilustrativo el libro también, ¿no? Porque nos creemos dioses a tal punto de desarrollo que hemos llegado, que ahora nos creemos dioses y de verdad que es una lectura que, al igual que estos debates que teníamos antes, ¿no?, sobre el pensamiento crítico, pues los deberíamos llevar a las escuelas. Creo que esta lectura ayudaría mucho a que los alumnos pues conociesen de dónde vienen, ¿no?
Sí.
Autoridades allí educativas de cualquier parte del mundo que nos estén escuchando, si pudieran, y siempre digo, hay dos cosas que deben, quizá más de ellas, pero personalmente que veo, dos cursos que deben de estar dentro de la currícula educativa, es el pensamiento crítico y cómo manejar tus finanzas.
Eso
Those
es.
are like two things, two subjects that should be included into the curriculum, the education of any school since you're little. Critical thinking class, like it's
Absolutely.
strictly called as such, and how to manage your finances. I mean, those are things that I would be like so grateful if that my school would have had it. You know, I love history as well, like you, Marcos, and geography, and so.
And if you let me, I will recommend to these authorities that this critical thinking, they can teach it through debate. It's a very beautiful activity, and you learn a lot how to think, how to argument in a proper way. And of course, I think is the best way of learning this critical thinking.
Absolutely.
And open to dialogue and be
Yeah.
tolerant as
Of
well.
course.
So those are extremely like there's priceless qualities that you
Absolutely.
can teach to a kid.
That's like going back to
I would take that class for sure. You know.
Absolutely. But going back to, this kind of ties back to what you were talking earlier, right? So this generational kind of echo chamber, right? So your grandfather was like this, so your father was like this, therefore your parents were like this, and you're going to be like this, your children are going to be, so they're almost going to be like, oh, right or left or whatever, right? So, but however, some people might think, you know what, that makes no sense to me. So, because I hang out with those other people, so I might want to change that. So there's like that people having a much more broader view of life is maybe that's a positive thing as well when it comes to technology where maybe, those days, 15, 20 years ago, you only got the newspaper that you bought. You don't have the money to buy maybe 10 different newspapers that were talking about 10 different things. So you only bought one, and that's what you were exposed to, and that's it. Whereas now you have the ability to see what you want to see in media or wherever, so you can choose. So you can't really put that on anything else. Only thing you really need is curiosity, right? So that's all that's a baseline function that we require. So I know we were kind of talking about kind of more negative aspects of things that probably are hopefully will change in the future. So in that vein, as a journalist, what do you feel passionate, or what do you feel optimistic about right now in the future that is coming, as it were?
Well, I think technology is developing a lot, and I think it's not important only to talk about something, but to do it in a charm way, we can say, to attract good audiences. And now we have a lot of different things that allow us to transmit this information in a different way. And the amount of possibilities of the future, we don't even understand or
Yes.
can think about it right now. So this is, I think this is a good point about the future. The other good point is what I refer before, this new model, economic model of subscription, because also audiences can participate deeper in this process of journalism. You can contact with the writers, the reporters, and I think this exchange, this feedback, will be very positive for a profession that sometimes is accused, and I think this is right. This is not. This is true of corporativism. So I think it's very important that journalists don't lose this contact with reality, with society, and with this new technology we have. We can do it easier than some years ago, that we were like in a journalist bubble, and we didn't get in touch with normal people, we can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting that you say that, because at the end of it, journalists, writers, the old adage that old saying, as it were, that pen is mightier than the sword, is really true. Maybe now is the keyboard, I'm not sure, but whatever it is, that is really true, as long as you have that power and the sensitivity to what's happening, and really use it as a tool to make things right or make things better, right? That's the important message, I think. So that's really great. So what's next for you, Marcos? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing. I know there's a big project that you were talking about a bit earlier, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, apart from my job, that is being an economic and energy reporter in El Confidencial, we are having a very, very interesting project. We found it a year and a half ago. It's called Brújula Global, and this is a magazine of international reporting. We write about topics that are not in other media, or are not as common in other media. Because for us, it's important not only speak about what is happening in the current day, breaking news, and this, I don't know, this circus that sometimes a journalist is, but to go deep and in this, in reality, and explain in slow journalism, as we say, what is happening in the long term. What is the key point of the project? Well, we know each other. We are friends at the same time as colleagues, but we are in different parts of the world. We are in 8 different countries. So we talk about global topics, but in a local way. So we try to explain, for example, the problems around I don't know, migration, or about the role of I don't know, of young people, of
Drugs and things like that as well.
some
pollution.
minorities, for example,
Yeah.
and that kind of things. But we don't do like a wall thesis. We explain it through the reality of people in a city in Mexico, or of a small town or village in Iraq, or in a poor neighborhood in the
Yes.
south of Madrid.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and this is very interesting because this Sunday, for example, we have a meeting every Sunday at 7 o'clock in the evening, and we are discussing, oh, but in my country it's like that, or in my country we have this problem, but we don't see it in the same way. And finally, you as a reader, because our aim is to address readers, not us.
Yeah.
You can understand how world is changing through these local realities in different parts of the world.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
I think it's not a very common project. It's not like a
I would agree.
newspaper as we are used to, but for us it's very interesting, and we have a lot of people that agree us that thank us to develop this project. It's not easy, of course, because we manage to do it through a crowdfunding, for example, and always the economic part is difficult when you are developing a new project. But for us, the most important is to tell interesting stories, to do
Yes.
journalism, and that's what we are doing right now. And in the future, let's see.
Absolutely. Hablamos en español porque, por favor.
Yeah, I mean, Marcos, personalmente, yo me he quedado súper encantada con el proyecto que has puesto, porque
Gracias.
incluso creo que tienes un colaborador compatriota mío también dentro de tu equipo.
¿De qué país, perdón?
Perú, Perú.
Sí. Ha habido una chica que ha escrito con nosotros desde Lima varios
Sí, sí,
artículos,
sí.
sí.
Y los artículos, lo que siento que algunos de ellos son de ese tipo de noticias que en el periodismo sensacional, o el que dicen el breaking news, sería como noticias viejas, pero que sin embargo aún están afectando muchísimo ciertas comunidades, ciertos países, que la gente de otro lado no lo aprecia o no lo sabe y simplemente no aprende de ello, y quizás su perspectiva no se educa al respecto, y sus perspectivas quizás puedan cambiar. Creo que tu proyecto tiene un especial valor y ya entiendo de dónde viene, ahora que conocemos un poquito más quién eres como profesional,
Bueno,
cómo te has formado
es un
y tal.
proyecto compartido. De hecho, yo soy uno de los 10 que estamos ahí, es decir, que para nada es personal, pero sí que todos aportamos pues nuestro punto de vista para hacer algo colectivo. Quiero
Pero debo
remarcar que no es mi proyecto.
Ok, genial. Los créditos para todos aquellos, pero me imagino que los 10 de ustedes comparten los mismos
Eso
valores
es.
como profesionales, y a eso es a lo que yo iba.
Mm.
Creo que el impacto que ustedes van a generar y están generando con el proyecto, que hasta ahora no lo hemos dicho, es Brújula Global. Creo que espero yo que continúe el crecimiento de ello, porque la información debe ser transmitida en lo más simple posible, porque al final los actos descritos como on-site, descritas con personas que están en el momento, que lo han visto, que lo saben, y que la autenticidad no se pierde en ningún proceso. Entonces, todo lo mejor del mundo para que tu proyecto prospere, y la gente que nos está escuchando, denle una chequeada. Vamos a poner la información junto con este chapter, con este capítulo. Vamos a poner información, los links, donde lo pueden seguir. Brújula Global es fantástica. Si quieres, ahora si no puedes viajar mucho por ahora y quieres aprender más de cosas de afuera, de otros países, ese es un punto muy importante donde acceder a información honesta, real, que vas a aprender muy bien.
Muchas
Back to you,
gracias.
Shirash.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Esta semana, por ejemplo, sacamos un especial sobre migraciones, y vamos a contar historias en Italia, en México y en Estados Unidos. De hecho, hemos tenido un periodista que ha estado empotrado, como se dice en la jerga, con la caravana
Así.
de migrantes que va desde Centroamérica hasta Estados Unidos.
Wow.
Ya hemos sacado un tema sobre el transcurso de esta caravana en México y ahora sacaremos otro sobre la gente que ya llegó a Estados Unidos por los problemas que está sufriendo, en este caso los adolescentes, que tienen una adaptación difícil y que están sufriendo problemas psicológicos también en este
Déjanos saber
sentido.
cuando lo tienes listo para ver si nosotros podemos ponerlo también en Publier y difundir un poco por ti.
Muchas
Absolutely.
gracias.
Everything, all the details will be available
Absolutely.
once we publish the episode. That'd be amazing. So this is a kind of a so just to kind of put you on the spot, as it were, and probably this is going to be our last question. And the question is this, right? I know you have come so far, and of course you have a long way to go. At this moment in time, if you had to think about someone that you wanted to be thankful, or maybe you didn't have the chance to thank them, right? Maybe you didn't have the chance to thank them at this moment in time, or never really did it because of whatever reason. If you wanted to thank someone for what you have achieved so far, who would that be, and what would that message be?
Of course, I will thank my parents because they let me to do what I really love, despite of knowing that this profession is not the best well paid, and this is not the most relaxed profession, we can say. So maybe my quality of life will be better if I will choose another studies, another profession. But I wanted to be a journalist,
Yes,
and
your
they
vocation,
support
right?
me.
Yeah.
This is my vocation, and it is not easy knowing that this is a very difficult profession, that your parents support you, knowing as they knew that if I would do a different profession, I don't know, a lawyer, for example, I will earn more money
More
and
money,
maybe
yeah.
I will live better. But they support me, and this is the most important thing I want to thank, because if not, of course, when you are 18, I would not be able to do it by myself. And
Yeah.
afterwards,
Exactly.
of course, all things, everything comes because you are just inside this career. But if in the beginning they don't tell you, okay, maybe it's not the best option as we think, but if you really want to do this,
Go for it.
we will support you. If they hadn't tell me this, of course I wouldn't be
Yeah.
here, and I am here for the moment.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, and you're doing amazing things, right? So I really you are a product of their philosophy, right? Effectively, and they allowed you to think for yourself, which is what is the kind of current theme that we have been talking about, like be having independent thoughts, not be kind of a model that came before, not be a cookie cutter that came before, but think for yourself, have independent thoughts, have critical thinking. This is what this whole thing that we've been talking about today, right? So that has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. It was really lovely. And but before we go, I would really like to ask you about one last book that would have affected you, and tell us a little bit about that. And just before we go, please also tell us how we can contact you. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how they can contact you as well. And that is, and just want to say again, thank you so very much for your time, and really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you a lot because I think it was a very good experience to be with you and share all of these thoughts that are very, very interesting. Sorry for my English. Sometimes I am
The English
not
was brilliant.
explaining properly
brilliant.
as I am Spanish, is not our better point. But to finish with a book in Spanish, as I did until now, yo escogería Los cínicos nos sirven para este oficio, de Richard Kapuscinski, que como sabéis fue un periodista polaco que viajó por todo el mundo contando historias muchas veces incómodas, enfrentándose a las autoridades, y su honestidad profesional e intelectual yo creo que es digna de mención. Y en este libro explica pues cómo, y ya lo dije anteriormente y ahora lo remarco, para ser periodista de alguna manera tienes que ser buena persona. No se trata obviamente de ser la
Exacto.
Madre Teresa de Calcuta. Nosotros nos pagan por dar información, pero obviamente si no tienes una mínima empatía con la realidad que estás contando y por supuesto honestidad para transmitirla de una forma correcta a quien te está escuchando o leyendo, no vas a ser buen periodista. Un buen periodista no es el que
Exacto.
da mejores titulares, no es el que genera más clics o más audiencia. Un buen periodista es una persona que es consciente de la responsabilidad que juega la sociedad y que estando tranquilo con uno mismo, con su propia conciencia, es capaz de transmitir esa información. Esa es la principal lección del libro. Es un libro que yo leí en la facultad cuando estaba estudiando, porque también te lo recomiendan, pero al igual que aquella novela que os comenté al principio, que leí en la escuela, lo disfruté de verdad. Para mí no fue motivo de estudio, sino motivo de aprendizaje en el mejor sentido. Me lo pasé muy bien. Y al igual que otras obras de Kapuscinski, algunas de ellas incluso llevadas al cine, muy interesantes, pues esta la recomiendo mucho, sobre todo porque es una lección de un periodista para periodistas. Y ya por último, para finalizar, pues me decíais si podía dar un contacto, ¿no? Por si alguien pues, quería ponerse en contacto conmigo. Lo podéis hacer a través de mi Twitter. Mi Twitter es @Marcos, 2 _ Lema, y ahí pues me podéis encontrar, hablar e intercambiamos impresiones con mucho gusto.
All the details will be published and will be available as well.
Yeah.
For you to-
So, Marcos, se dice que no se cierra sin dar los créditos respectivos. Nombramos a Carmen. ¿Y cuál es el nombre de tu papá?
José Luis.
José Luis y Carmen, pues te han llevado muchísimo los créditos como los deberías y una de las cosas que he aprendido en la edad que tengo es que dar libertad a las personas que amas es lo más difícil que hacer. Es lo más temeroso de hacer, en el sentido de dejarles de experimentar cosas como lo han hecho con Marco. Pues muy buen trabajo allí. Mira, mi Spanglish me quiere traicionar a veces. Bueno,
Good job.
muchísimas gracias. Ha sido adorable tener esta mañana para mí, y son las 9 de la mañana, 9:30 aquí. Muchísimas gracias por tu tiempo. Thank you so much for your knowledge, for your time, for you graciously explain and share your life with us. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, everybody. See you in the
Thank you a
next
lot.
session.
See you.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.